video tells the story of Jim's very ordinary life. My name is Laura. I'm the computer voice he's using to tell his story. You don't mind, right? His old voice is too raspy anyway. Jim was born in Cambridge, Mass. in 1947, but his story really begins in 1905 when his grandparents arrived in America. Felice and Josefina came from Godrano, Sicily, and settled in New York's Lower East Side. They had 5 kids, including Jim's dad, Vincent, whom they called Jim for some unknown reason. Alessandro and Civita came from Gaeta, a small town near Naples, Italy. They settle in Somerville, Mass. They had 6 kids, including Jim's mom, Alessandra, who legally changed her name to the more American Sandra. 2 kids died, Tommaso at age 2 of whooping cough, and Maria at age 10 of appendicitis. A year after Maria's death, Alessandro died of a kidney infection, and 14-year-old Vinny quit school to support the family, which he did by driving a truck. By the way, the trucking company he founded in 1924 became the parent of one of the largest trucking conglomerates in New England. Jim's parents marry in 1946. They live in New York for a while, then move back to Watertown. His brother Bob is born in 1948, 11 months after Jim. They were 2 of 70 million boomers. Bob and Jim are quite a handful. Their Aunt Joan, who thinks kids should be seen and not heard, calls them juvenile delinquents. Their rough play lands one of them in the emergency room every year. They are more civilized when visiting their relatives, especially when their cousin Elaine is assigned to keep them in check. In 1954, the family moves to Lexington. Jim's dad is an insurance underwriter and his mom is a homemaker. Their favorite place is Paragon Park, Nantasket Beach, which they visit every summer. There are open fields and thick woods around the house, which their parents encourage them to explore. Then Joan builds an 11-foot deep pool with a diving board. Jim wonders if they have gone too far with their hijinks, but Bob is unconcerned about the adults' motives. Their brother Jack is born in 1955, but their mom keeps him close, remembering the trauma of the older boy's early years. When she's not around, though, Jack eagerly joins in their play, like this daring attempt to launch a toboggan over a jury-rigged ski jump. When Aunt Joan buys a house in Nantasket Beach, their antics shift into high gear. They are on their best behavior, though, when they visit their New York relatives with their dad, especially at Aunt Millie's farm in Connecticut. Jim attends Hancock Elementary School and Muzzy Junior High, historic 19th century buildings that are now condominiums. When the truth is found to be lies. The 60s are about Vietnam, assassinations, protests, and riots. Jim attends Lexington High, where he's an average student and a bench-warming basketball and football player. During the summer, he works at his uncle's trucking company, where they let him gas and park the trucks. His first car is a 1957 Pontiac, a gift from his Uncle Tom when he turned 16. Every holiday is celebrated with their extended family and always includes Nona's homemade ravioli. These gatherings are presided over by an unsmiling Uncle Vincent, whom everyone calls the Smiler. In 1965, Jim starts at Northeastern, where he studies economics, joins the Army ROTC, gets a pilot's license, and takes a co-op job at Citibank.
may look like.
He tries commuting for a while, but quickly moves to the Back Bay to live with friends.
Baby, I'm afraid.
Bob finishes high school in 1966 and joins the Army.
Don't you want somebody to love?
Jim continues in school, working part-time as a truck driver, a cabbie, and a copy boy for a now-defunct Boston newspaper.
You better.
He buys a used Jaguar that breaks down the first week. Joan threatens to sue the dealer for taking advantage of someone as dumb as him. Eventually, they settle by trading the car in for a new Volkswagen Bug. A year later, Jim trades the Bug for a used Volvo P1800.
Run down your dress.
Joan buys him a new Cougar for graduation, but keeps the title so he can't trade it.
Like a guest. Don't you
Jim dates in college, but no one really clicks until he meets Yvonne at Citibank.
need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better.
Yvonne and Jim marry in 1970. They hold their reception at Tavern on the Green in Central Park. Their honeymoon in Bermuda is Jim's first time out of the Northeast and his first vacation ever. And it doesn't end when they get home. Their entire first year without kids is a honeymoon. Christine is born in 1972 and Michael in 1973. They live in a small apartment in Jackson Heights for 7 years while the kids are growing up. With frequent trips to Disney World and Lexington. Citibank hires him to run a teletype department, but he finds the job boring and hates dealing with the department's 60-person staff. The job's only positive is the bank's open invitation to make improvements. Seizing on this, he hires consultants and works with them to build a system that automates the operation. This is just one of 500 standalone projects that Citibank puts in the hands of its new hires. He had no idea he was joining a revolution. In the next 2 decades, Jim helps lead a dozen such projects, including the development of the bank's first electronic payment network, which now moves $1 trillion a day. In 1978, the bank sends him to Williams College for polishing. The polishing doesn't take, but he learns a lot about working with people, and he grows a beard. By 1980, the family has settled into their new home, a condominium on Staten Island, where the kids attend Catholic school. When Citibank decides to move their systems organization to Stamford, Connecticut, Jim quits and works as a consultant with other banks. 3 years later, Citibank offers him a technology head job, a role for which he is spectacularly unqualified. But Citi is home, and he cannot refuse. He manages to stumble through, unable to shake off the unwanted management label. He buys a Datsun 280ZX, then in a moment of insanity trades it for a DeLorean, which truthfully spends more time in the shop than in his garage. In 1986, the family moves into a bigger house in the same Staten Island neighborhood. And somehow, they all survive the kids' teenage years.
against tomorrow. Surprise yourself just from the moment we
Jim joins the architecture group to help replace the 500 standalone systems built in the 70s and 80s. The bank spends $100 million trying, but the project fails. It turns out that building systems is easier than replacing them. He learns a lot, though, about enterprise systems, which will come in handy when he leaves the bank again. The family buys a small lake house in the Catskills and a boat. No one likes the house very much, and Jerry and Mike destroy the boat by hitting an underwater log. In 1991, Jim and Mike take the first of a dozen annual sailing trips to the Caribbean, Italy, and New England. And Mike joins a new band as its lead guitarist. Yet again, the bank promotes Jim without any real justification to head technology for its securities and currency trading businesses. By the mid-90s, both kids are off to college, Chris to BC and Mike to NYU. They will both continue their education and both graduate as lawyers. Chris meets Matt in law school, and they marry when they graduate. Their reception is at the Plaza, which is now also a condo. Mike meets Christina a few years later, and they marry. Chris takes over the music store Mike bought in his teens, allowing him to join a New Jersey law firm and eventually to become a partner. In 2000, the family buys a house in Cape Cod. This becomes the family's summer gathering spot. A year later, Jim's and Yvonne's first grandchild, Alex, is born. 5 more follow during the decade: William, Mitchell, Morgan, Max, and Marin. Jim retires from Citibank in 2003 and works as a consultant for iFlex, then for Oracle. The job takes him around the world for another 10 years. In 2005, he buys oceanfront property in the Dominican Republic and builds condominiums with help from investors. Boys Week starts in 2011 as Jim and his male prodigy visit Cape Cod, Niagara Falls, upstate New York, St. Bart's, Yellowstone, the BVI, and Iceland.
I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Larry and he produce a blackjack app for the iPhone in 2014, and 2 years later, he writes a book for blackjack players that is published online. Neither project goes very far, but Jim becomes a blackjack pro in the process and plays all the time.
Another round of bullets. It's my
He has open heart surgery in 2019, but makes a full recovery.
day. I won't let the pain sink in.
In 2013, he stops working to spend more time with family and friends, to travel and write, and to pursue interests in genealogy, photography, and video editing. Jim and Yvonne settle into a retirement routine in the 2020s, watching the grandkids, who are all excellent students, graduate and begin their adult lives. Alex graduates from Milton High and goes on to BC, spending her junior year in France. William graduates from BC High School and goes on to BC as well. Mitchell graduates from Staten Island Technical High School and starts at Fordham. Morgan and Marin are accomplished dancers who perform publicly and compete all the time. Max, a student at BC High School, is into sports and hobbies like drone flying. That's it for Jim's story so far. Don't be fooled by the sad music. Jim and Yvonne are looking forward to many more years of retirement fun. The sad music is a contingency. Jim wouldn't want people dancing in the aisles when one of these updates turns into his last hurrah.
Everyone says that it's all in my head, and I can't accept it yet. I'm not ready to just give in. I know that I can't live in this pain with these feelings of regret. I can't comprehend this and pretend